the international mentoring community, all things mentoring lounge. And here we enjoy a conversation about mentoring from different kinds of perspectives. Doug and I, who are your hosts, get into a bit of a conversation at times. Sometimes we present from our own lived experience, and that, I think, is a great way to open up insights and learning about mentoring. And today we're going to take a look at the mentoring definition, and Doug and I are just going to sort of look at it from different angles and get it to the point of understanding a mentoring program, so that what we can do is sort of set up the groundwork for you. And I'll share a little bit more about the agenda, but I think what would be a great service here, Doug, for everyone is just to share a little bit about who we are, and then we'll go over a bit more of the agenda.
Sounds good. So I'm Doug Lawrence. I am one of the co-founders of the International Mentoring Community. And I also have my own company called Talent C. And Talent C, we're about all things mentoring is basically the best way to describe it. And with the International Mentoring Community, I am Director of Practice and Outreach.
And Dr. Stephen Hobbs here. I am the Director of Certification and Education, from that sort of perspective, bringing it all together, certainly from the certification point of view. And I have my own company, and in there I do a fair bit of mentoring. And I find that it's a very useful way in which to have conversations with persons that I interact with, and to use a mentoring approach versus a coaching approach. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but certainly on our channel, there's lots of considerations. There's actually one video in particular, I'm going to mention it today, that takes a look at mentoring and coaching, and what's the, how do they connect with one another, and how do they sort of feel different to each other. And you can certainly get into that as well. But today, what we're going to take a look at is around this mentoring definition, dig into it a little bit more, look at some of the benefits that go with mentoring, and then talk a little bit about the mentoring program from a certification point of view. And then we have a few points we want to share with you about, next steps. So in some ways, whereas if you've seen some of our other videos, you might go, isn't this something like an intro? Yeah, but every once in a while we come back to the basics and just sort of do an update video about things that we think are of value to you. And if this is your first time, then there's lots of other videos that we have shot over time that you can get into. If not, this is a great place to get started and see where it takes you. So I think with that, Doug, is there anything about that you want to update us, or do you want to just go straight into the definition that we use?
We can go straight in, yeah.
Okay. Well, then, just before we do that, I think there is something that's worth noting today. National Mentoring Day in the U.S. is October the 27th. That's tomorrow.
Yep.
And I thought that we just sort of do a shout out into the National Mentoring Day. A lot more people interact with the International Mentoring Month, which is in January. But I just wanted to acknowledge that tomorrow in the US, it is a National Mentoring Day. And in celebration, if you have a mentor today, have you thought about writing a thank you note to your mentors? Why not, right? If you are a mentor, I'm sure you probably had a mentor. Have you thought about writing a thank you note to your mentor that helped you become a mentor? So these are things just to think about. I just thought I'd put that in, Doug, just before we get into our definition. And so I'll turn it over to you.
And just to add to that is the aspect of, writing a note to say thank you for, your time and your effort at working with me and all of that. But there's also the things that the mentee can do. Like I've shared this story before. I've been I was invited to the wedding of one of my mentees who, when I broached or had a conversation with her and her new husband, it was, well, we wouldn't even begin to think of having our wedding without you being present for all the things that you do and all the things you mean to us as our mentor. So there's a number of different ways to do that. So
Wonderful.
So the mentoring definition is mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship where the mentor and the mentee learn and grow together through personal and professional development.
Anything in there in particular you want to pick up? You sort of highlighted something there with that little example. So anything particular?
Well, it's for me, it's the two-way trusted relationship always stands out every time we read this. And then it's the aspect of the collaborative approach. So the mentor and the mentee learning and growing personally and professionally through personal sort of the key. And when you look at it, it's pretty much the whole definition is it kind of all fits into that quite nicely.
Yeah, today I'd like to pick up on the collaborative. Collaborative is about, I have a high sense of contribution. I have a high sense of learning that goes with it. It's very collaborative. Sometimes a person might learn and sort of sit back and not contribute. What we're attempting to do from a collaborative point of view with mentoring is very much you're in there, both of you are learning. That's why it's two-way. I just wanted to pick up on that word collaborative today. I think it's worth taking note of that, because if you start falling out of it being collaborative, it starts becoming something else. And I think that's one of the key aspects of mentoring. So that was I just wanted to add that today. It just came across. I was thinking about our time we were going to share today, and I went, I think I'm going to mention that today and just sort of emphasize that just a little bit more. So, well, that's great. So from a mentoring perspective, what mentoring means, all right, and it was hinted at, Doug shared, there's a personal, professional, but I'd also say that there's a social cultural aspect, because it influences community and businesses and charities and government in terms of where mentoring actually takes place. So from a personal point of view, I have actually tracked back over the years. I know that I've had 5 particular mentors in my life, and each one of them contributed something more and more and more and got me thinking about it, not so much in piling stuff on top, but nuancing, in a sense, I would use that word, helping me to nuance the way in which I wanted to live my life. And I thank each one of them. And my very first mentor on a personal basis was when I was started to work. And he actually helped me to sort out, hang on a minute, sometimes you got to slow down a little bit. Don't go like into, like a bull into a teacup store. Right, and start flagging around in that. He says, no, just take it easy and think a little bit about what it is you want to do. The unfortunate thing is, Doug, I still to this day cannot remember even his first name, and I have no way of going back and going, how can I even acknowledge him by his name? Because that's quite a few years ago. Okay, put a little bit of water under the bridge since then. But he was the one that really got me into really thinking about what it means to be of assistance to others, because I was a playground leader. It was called an adventure playground, where the kids actually got to create the playground, and I was there. So in many senses, I was doing things like facilitating as well and coaching. But there was a lot of mentoring where I would sit down and have conversations. Now, would I have called it that at the time? Probably not, but on my own reflection, I could go back into that personal capacity and sort of see it. Do you have any similar story from a personal point of view in terms of interacting with mentors years and years ago?
Well, for me, the one that really stands out would be my Uncle Gordon, who was in the Canadian military. And he was the sort of individual that he had this persona about him that made you, I always looked up to him. I always wanted to follow in his footsteps. He was definitely the true picture of a role model that you would want to emulate yourself after. And so he's probably the first I would turn to, I guess, as if I'm looking for an example as far as, on the personal side. And for some, in some respects, he actually influenced my professional side as well.
Yeah, and that's what happened with the gentleman that I would just mention, because that got me into the leadership playgrounds and into recreation and leisure, and it took me along a path. And I can thank him, and there's other mentors I met along the way. So he actually helped me from a professional point of view. I will say I've developed a professional approach to what I'm doing. Is that what you're sort of suggesting in terms of the gentleman you just mentioned?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that that's important. Is if you just sort of take a little bit of a reflective moment, just okay, where in my life? Some people might say be father, mother. That's possible. Okay. Others might say it could have been my uncle. Other people could say it was my first person that I was employed with, who got my head out of my rear end kind of thing and got me going down a path that was useful. So I think it's great to reflect on who might have been a mentor in your life, using the definition that Doug used, and the two-way to be able to have that conversation, or else it could have been more coaching, right? Coaching, right, to get the end result that you're looking for. Mentoring is sort of have a conversation that's really unfolding for you. Do you have a memory of a really great professional mentor for you?
I have memories of those who influenced or played a part in my professional growth. Um, I wouldn't, knowing what I know now, and that's, one of the things for us all to consider is that as we grow personally and professionally, that our idea who we wish to emulate ourselves after is going to change. It's kind of like when I first started out with uh, with Talent C and mentoring and all of that. I didn't know what it was that I was actually doing. I didn't know that I was mentoring people, and that's what they called it, was mentoring. And I'm going, oh my goodness, okay. And it gave me a different perspective on people as a whole. So every time I look at somebody, I go, well, person would probably be a really good mentor for me, and I should probably have that conversation. Or, I can maybe extract from them bits and pieces that I need in order to help myself move forward and become just that much better of a mentor to, with, as we talk quite often, the whole idea of the deeper, richer mentoring experience. I can kind of pull all that stuff from there. So I think it was my father who gave me, I can still see it to this day, where I was being transferred with the RCMP, and I was going from, I think it was Masset on the Queen Charlotte Islands, and I was being transferred to northern British Columbia, and I had phoned home to say, okay, my transfer come through. I'm heading to a small community called Dees Lake, and I don't know if there's radio communication or telephone or anything. So this could be, our last time, hopefully in the right context. This could be our last time to, to have a conversation. And I said, any advice? And my father, the one time he did have something positive to say was, you're going to be working with a number of different people over the course of your career, and you started this journey. And what you need to be able to do in order to make yourself that much better is to always look for the positives and make those part of who you are as a person, and cast aside the negative things that you see. Cast aside those and make sure that they're not part of who you are going forward.
Yeah. And when you take the definition that you read earlier and being able to share it through the lens that you just shared, you can sort of see how the personal, professional conversations would unfold, right? And
Yeah.
even we sometimes don't necessarily give them credit, but our family can be great mentors to us. And if we pick up and we actually go back and look at the threads, right, and those threads, become strings, and those strings become chords, and you start to see, well, hang on a minute, that's kind of interesting how that happened for me here, and that's what did that for me there, and that's what did that for me there. And I always appreciate it because I've had the pleasure of working a lot of places in the world. So this notion of my mentoring in different capacities and being mentored in different capacities has certainly unfolded for me. I may not have known, like back in my 20s, right, and early 30s, that this was mentoring. I'm not necessarily thinking about it that way. But as I reflect now that I'm much along, starting to look at the doorway that has a 7-0 on it, I can start to really appreciate it. But in that also is mentoring also arrives because of your interactions with those who might be younger than you. And I've had some really wonderful younger mentors who help me understand currency. And I'm using currency in the sense of, well, if you're living now in your late 60s, these are some things that are current. Have you stayed in touch with some of these things? And for that, I think my interactions with those who are younger, who might be 40, that might be younger to my late 60s, and some of the 20-year-olds that I've interacted with, and they've given me different kinds of perspectives. And I've always enjoyed that part of it. And that's why this mentoring lens and the meaning of mentoring, it's such a beautiful way in which to be what I will call, for the world, with the world, from the world kind of idea. And I feel so tickled that I can actually get back and help others become and learn more about what mentoring means. Any thoughts around any of that for yourself from a bit of a personal story or anything?
Well, the one thing for me that stands out is that I need to be open and flexible and willing to learn as a mentor, because there are those that can have influence on us from a personal and a professional perspective, but we need to be able to be open enough to receive that. And the example that I typically use is the aspect of my grandchildren, and very young and very tender in years of age. But every time I get together with them, I come away from our meeting where I've learned something. And sometimes it can be just about myself.
I'm sorry, we had a freeze there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it looked like you were saying something, but there was no
Yeah.
sound.
Okay. The the beauty of what you're sharing, okay, so there must be a little bit of a break there in terms of connection. So, but the beauty of what you're saying. So, what would be the key learning out of that for you, for now as a deeper, richer mentor?
You mean as far as the my interaction with the grandchildren?
Yeah, yeah,
So how they respond to and deal with things in their life gives me, because I try to remain as open and as flexible and willing to learn as I possibly can, is that I can come away from, from conversations, interactions and stuff with them, to be able to, for example, my grandson last weekend played indoor soccer, and I saw some things that I never really thought about. It was that he was he was able to anticipate, even at his early age, he was able to anticipate where the ball was going to go to, and not, and not sort of sit back and wait for the ball to go, but actually anticipate where the ball was going to be or where it was going to go and then eventually be. And so then I'm thinking, how do I take that and how do I place that into sort of my mentoring, where I'm able to say, okay, when I meet with people, I'm able to anticipate where they may want to go, but I also am able to anticipate where they are going, and then be able to determine how do I help them get to where they want to go.
Yeah. Well, we have a great comment from Catherine here in terms of younger people make wonderful technology mentors. We had a little bit of blip there just for a second from a technology point of view. What happened? Because I thought I was talking and I wasn't. Right. So, and I think that you make a really great point, and what Catherine is attempting to say is that we can continue to learn if we hold on to what it was and then keep as we get older, right? In a sense, or what I will call, there's a sense of older, but I also think I'm getting younger, right? Because I'm starting to appreciate so much more about what's going on because I get different views of it, right? Is that there's so much that we can still learn while serving as a mentor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think, I've heard and had conversations with some people, and they go, "Well, I think I'm just going to sort of settle down, and I don't think I'm really going to do anything." And I go, "Have you thought about mentoring?" "Well, what's mentoring?" I've not had my own experience of that, and this is where I have some conversations, right? To your point about how beautiful that can be, and I think Catherine's sort of nudging us to understand that and celebrate that as well, because a mentor doesn't have to be someone who is 60, 70, right? A mentor could be someone who's 18 assisting someone who's 16, and that sometimes happens in school mentoring programs.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. It's the tools and techniques that you use, which is why this is why we do what we do. There's so much richness in terms of tools, techniques, and technologies that can be put into play as you're mentoring. Would you agree with that in terms of across ages and tools and techniques that are available to us?
Yes, most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the big thing is that, if you're a mentor today, are you open and flexible to learning from all sorts of different aspects? And, we always have the conversation, or we talk about the term the reverse mentoring, which is, the idea of the younger person mentoring the older person, when in fact, if you look at the definition that we read today, it doesn't speak to any of that.
Yeah, mentoring can happen wherever, right? It's really about the tools and techniques that we have been attempting to summarize through IMC, through the video series that you can access. So wherever you find this video, check back into the International Mentoring Community on YouTube, and you can find lots and lots of ideas, because there's a lot of benefit to mentoring, not only for the person who is being mentored, in other words, the mentee. I'll tell you what, I'll certainly raise my hand and say, as a mentor, I have learned so much just simply because I had to, in sharing it, I had to think through it and feel through it sometimes. And there's times where I might go to say something and I go, hang on, we'll pull that one back, right? And just sort of get to some understanding of what it is that I want to share. And that's why I think there's also the acknowledgement that there's a mentor-mentee that are in this mentorship relationship, this mentorship connection. And as you explore it and listen to the videos that we've shot over time, right, there's I think you use what, deeper, richer? Was it the
Yeah.
deeper, richer connection that can happen because of this way of being, right? And I think it's so beautiful. And I would certainly encourage everyone to look at mentoring and get involved with mentoring and seeing where it can take you. But at the same time, not get confused with coaching. Mentoring and coaching, there are elements that connect them, but there's a lot of things that you would go, okay, that's a little bit different than that. And I would offer, here's one way that I would look at it, is that mentoring is really this conversation that you're having, that there's a lot of sharing that's going on. Coaching might be getting you to take a look at how do I improve what it is that I'm doing and giving you some insights. But you really got this deeper, like to Doug's words, deeper, richer conversation that's going on from a mentoring point of view, and it's two-way. Is there anything from a mentoring coaching point of view that you want to share at this point, Doug?
Well, the one thing for me that jumps out in it, and it spans the aspect of the benefits, it spans the coaching and the mentoring, it spans a number of things, is that we need to, going forward, we need to be always aware, always need to be cognizant of the fact that mental health plays a huge part in all of this. And just, so I'm working with entrepreneurs, and one of the first things that I try to do is to create that safe environment to have that conversation and actually have your young entrepreneur come forward and say, oh, but yes, by the way, I've been diagnosed with this or this or this. And what that does for us as mentors is help us customize or tailor the mentoring approach that we're going to take. It forces us to look in that toolbox for the tools, tips, techniques, all of those things. It forces us to look at, okay, how can I take some of those and apply them to this situation, because there's a mental health umbrella that's now over top of the relationship.
Yeah, which speaks to what Doug and I have created also, is the International Mentoring Community, which is a place where you can get certification in mentoring. And we have worked out a sense of a profile that you can self-assess against, and where you get no's on your self-assessment, then there's education that can be provided that gets you to the point of going through the certification process that allows you, yes, to get your certificate, but also to establish the sense of a portfolio that you can keep improving upon, and if you want to come back and get recertified. So we have built that around this because we saw value in that. And it's also to deepen and enrich your experience of mentoring, so that, through reflective thought, you go, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. Maybe the next time I go to mentor, maybe I can use this tool or technique or technology to be able to bring this all forward. So there's a lot of benefits to doing a certification process, but at the same time, it's not that, we're not sitting here, Doug, I think you would agree, we're not sitting here being, well, it's mandatory, if you're going to become a mentor, you must become a certified mentor. That's not what we're saying. But if certification as a way in which to satisfy that learning approach, we have set that up. That's why we have the International Mentoring Community, and we have the certification processes that we work with. Anything you want to add about that?
The one word that jumped out while we've been talking has been credibility. And, I certainly know personally how being certified as a mentor has given me credibility when I speak to businesses about how I can bring value and how I can help them move forward. And so, it's the aspect of credibility being something that, it's a benefit that you can get from there, but it's also something that from my perspective, I need to have that.
Yeah, and I think as we sort of aim towards, closing off this broadcast, there's a sense of that mentoring, you can take up the certification process. And sometimes if you want to, you can just take up, what are the key action outcome statements that go with mentoring? Okay. And maybe I just want to know about those, but I may not necessarily want to go through the certification process. Great. Even those insights give you clarity to help you be consistent in your approach as you go to have conversations with people. You may not say I'm a mentor, but in a sense, taking a look at those that we have provided, and if you take a look at the last, I think it was 7 videos in the series. So if you're looking at this one, go back 7, we go through all the different action outcome statements that you can take a look at and see what mentoring entails. And that's a great place to start, or certainly go to the website and download what am I looking for here? The profile, right? That gives you all of the action outcome statements, and to be able to do your own self-assessment and then have a conversation with us if you want to. So there's lots of ways in which to just keep moving it forward, because if you think about it this way, and I think Doug would agree, and I'll ask him afterwards, there's something to be said, the contributions that you make, that you share with others, and to do it from a confidence point of view. If mentoring is a way in which to help you do that, then that is something that is of great value, not only to yourself, also to the person that you're interacting with. And as it ripples out into community as well, to do it with correctness is important. Any thoughts to that, Doug?
It definitely, to do it with correctness is definitely something that we need to, as mentors, we need to be thinking about for sure. The whole, for me, this whole conversation about the certification and all of that is the aspect of it may seem a daunting task to have to go through to become certified because it's just mentoring. But when you start to see what you actually can give back as a result of going through the certification process, it just blows your mind on how much different the influence you can have on organizations, on people, on the community, on family, all of those things. It just blows my mind how much influence you can actually have, and influence for a good reason, just because you've gone down that certification path and you've taken and brought your lived experience to life.
Yeah. And I think there's probably 5 things that we could say. These are 5 things that we talk about in the international mentoring community. And Doug sort of hinted at the first one is to share from your lived experience. As you've gained that lived experience, and you can share by learning what it means to mentor and to use the tools and techniques of mentoring, those concepts and practices, that is a great way in which to move forward. Another one is it consolidates your thinking and feeling, because if you're going to mentor, you're going to share some thoughts with someone, then you're sharing what matters. And yes, it matters to you, but then in conversation, that's why it's two-way, it allows you to be in conversation with the other person whose responses may actually influence you in terms of your thinking and feeling. And that's why it's so beautiful when you get into the mentoring component. And I think also mentoring from a third point of view is a way to guide you to something else. I know over time, and conversations I've had with Doug, I know that this has happened, even as how long were you in the RCMP? You were in for
25
years. So as you moved along, you got a chance to do a lot of mentoring, right? Just like in my own capacity, university professor, and did a lot of work with young entrepreneurs and that. This notion of guiding and helping them in their learning, their growth, and their development. There's one thing to learn something, there's another thing to grow with it, and there's nothing to develop other skills, right, and approaches to what's happening. And mentoring allows that to take place. It's a great guiding mechanism to have that happen. So grabbing a mentor along the way, I know I've had quite a few mentors along the way as well. So it's been very helpful. But a fourth thing I would just mention, if there's anything that I can speak to, it's this transition, the notion of transaction, transformation, transition, transcendence. There it is. I knew there's a third word there. So let me say that again. From a transition point of view, there's transaction, transformation, and transcendence. I've had a lot of that in my life because of some of the work that I did, and some of the mentors that I've had along the way have really assisted me. Like I've actually worked in war zones, and I have done lots of really beautiful things for the world. And I've had that opportunity. I've had some people who've really given me great assistance in how I'd be able to look at the world, right? The planet, the whole, have been assisted by mentors that I've had along the way. But I think the fifth one that I always appreciate about mentoring, all right, is that it answers a lot of those life meaning questions for me, because I'll slow down and I'll go, well, if I'm going to have a conversation about what does that mean to me? Hang on, let me do a little bit of thinking and feeling for myself before I just go blurting something out. All right. And remember back to, oh, yeah, that happened there. Oh, hang on a minute. That didn't go so well. What could I share that might help that the person I'm interacting with not to go down some path that they go, oh, why did I go this way? Kind of idea. And to assist them. And I'm sort of thinking like life purpose and answer your calling, phrases like that. And how might I use my mentoring, my story? Remember, I mentioned earlier, I'm starting to knock on the 70 door. So I put in a few road miles, quite a bit of water's gone underneath the bridge. And how might I help some? So it's share your gifts, consolidate your thinking, guide yourself to something else, decide your own transition and how that might help others, and answer those sort of niggling life meaning questions. Does any of that bring up anything, or any one of those you want to highlight before we aim towards closing, Doug?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, those were ones that I was doing as I was reflecting on what I wanted to share today about the mentoring definition and getting involved in a mentoring program. What did it mean for me? And those were ones that certainly that popped up for me. I think we're heading towards a close down time. There'll be a lot more of these sessions that we'll be doing over time. You can find us on Wednesday mornings here, and doing it at 10 a.m. Mountain. And we'd certainly have you join us, and we'd appreciate that. I know we had a couple of visitors today, so that was great. And it's wonderful to have people jump in and send messages to me so I can get to see them. I have the control panel. So I know that they were thanking us, Doug, for what was going on. So like we always do, Doug gets the exit comments. I bring you all in, and Doug gets to say what it is that he would say to summarize it, take us out. And again, I would encourage you to join us here on a Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain for our next broadcast. And with that, Doug, I'll let you share your thoughts going out. Then I'll just say thank you, and I will end the stream. So it's over to you.
Thank you. And I'm going to pick up on our conversation around certification. And my thoughts and the takeaway from today's conversation is that certification is part of building your credibility as a mentor. And it can be a tool, a process that you need in your toolkit. And I encourage you today to reach out to us if you're not sure how that can take place, and we'll do our best to guide you to where you need to go.
Great. Well, thank you. Take care, everyone.